Hey, what's up? Xena Warrior Princess. Was this a really good TV show? Was this just good at the time and yeah, not so great now? Was it good at the time and like is great now? Or was it something that like wasn't really that great at the time, but it's really, really okay now or good now? How did it date? How did it age? You know what I mean? Is it dated? At the time, I remember Xena Warrior Princess being on TV and literally there was nothing else really to watch if you liked fantasy or sword and sorcery or anything like that. And Xena Warrior Princess was that. It was the fantasy TV show that they had at the time for people that liked fantasy TV. And that's the thing about it, is that there wasn't a lot of fantasy TV. There was literally Xena Warrior Princess and Hercules Legendary Journeys, which honestly I thought Xena was better. I actually liked the character Xena. It was like she was a regular person. Was she really a princess? I don't remember if she was actually a princess or she was just a warrior uh, woman, warrior, girl. But the thing about like um, Hercules' legendary journeys is that it was literally like nobody can beat Hercules. He would win every time. It's like he was already like set that up as like he's the strongest guy in the world. Whereas like Xena Warrior Princess, there were like she was basically they had villains who were goddesses. I think the name of the woman who was the goddess villain was Callista or something like that. It was a really really long time ago, so it's really hard to remember all that because it's like it was just a show that was on like a really really like while ago, and she would keep coming in and she would keep messing with her and stuff like that. So there were the gods and the goddesses and the whole pantheon and stuff like that. I think it's mostly Greek inspired, like Greek goddesses and Greek gods and whatever. Same as like Hercules. Even felt like with Hercules and Xena that they were kind of like two different characters in the same universe or very, very similar universes. And that's the thing about like the shows at the time. There wasn't any. There was that. And that was it. And it wasn't until, I don't think it was till later, maybe it was at the time, I don't really remember, but later on, there were other shows that started coming on that was sort of like that. Let's do a fantasy or a sci-fi TV show. It was that kind of thing. So Farscape, Stargate, Babylon 5, all of these shows. And honestly, for some reason, I just couldn't get into Babylon 5. I don't know why exactly, but if I look at it objectively, it's like, yeah, it looks like a pretty solid show. They're in a space station, it's in the future, there's aliens, it sounds pretty cool, right? But for some reason, just like, it was something about Babylon 5 that just did not hold my interest. And Farscape was a little bit better. Farscape had puppets, and basically a lot of the cast were puppets. There was a guy, he was a astronaut, he kind of went into space, fell into a wormhole, and came out this other side of this universe where there were spaceships and there were like alien advanced life and everything like that, and they were puppets. And there was like one of the coolest looking, I think, villains of all time. And I think the guy's name was Scorpius or something like that. I know it had the word scorpion in it, right? So that's the thing about it. It's like it was okay. That wasn't too bad. I think that if that was the only thing on TV, I would pretty much watch it. It's not like now where like you can pretty much watch anything at your fingertips. You can find any movie. You can pretty much just like rent and like download and stream and rent and buy whatever any movie you want. And any series, whether it's recent or old or whatever, or just go and buy the DVD and you have the physical copy, right? Whereas like back then, it was literally like what's on TV, because you pretty much would only like rent a VHS once or like rent a DVD once. And at one point, literally like you couldn't even rent a DVD. There was a time where when those rental places left, there was like, and you wanted to watch some kind of movie, there was just no way to see it. You'd have to buy it basically. You have to go to like a video store that sold it and buy it, and that was the only way to see it and stuff like that. And I still have like these movies that I had to buy that I just wanted to see once, but doesn't matter. I had to buy it in order to see it. So whatever, right? And so with Xena Warrior Princess, there was a lot of cool stuff. But if you notice, the most, like if you look at cosplay right now, right, the biggest hero that girls cosplay is Red Sonja, way more than Xena. I rarely see Xena Warrior Princess cosplayed. And if you look at something like Red Sonja, well, there was never a TV show for Red Sonja. There was a movie, Bridget Nielsen or something like that starred in it. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger was in it. I've got the movie on DVD, but the thing is, it's not a great movie, unfortunately. I think at the time what happened was they took Conan out. Conan the Barbarian was a great movie, and then Conan 2 came out, and even though it was considered like not as good as the first one, maybe considered a flop, it was the end. Like they were not going to make any more Conan movies because of that, or any more Schwarzenegger Conan movies because of that second movie. Then it just like it came out and people were just disappointed it wasn't as good as the first one. Some people liked it. I thought it was okay, but it wasn't really. I don't think it was as good as the first one. And so, and then they had like a Red Sonja movie, and then they had that. So what so there was that. And with Xena Warrior Princess, what was cool about it was cool. Like guys could like it and women could like it, right? Because she was like a strong female character. And women like that. They like strong female heroes, and guys like that too. Guys like female characters also, and female heroes, and strong female heroes, right? Whatever. Because like, hey, if you look at one of the coolest not superheroes, but like fantasy heroines of all time, it's Tarna from Heavy Metal the movie. And they're still making Tarna is still popular now. Heavy Metal the movie came out in the 80s. There was another Heavy Metal movie that came out, Heavy Metal 2000, which came around the 2000s, and they were trying to make another one. They were like, the first one was successful, people want another one, let's do this one. And they really didn't make a great animated feature. It just wasn't as good as the first one at all. Even though they had pretty good ideas there. They had one of the woman that played, or she was like, her likeness, whatever was in the animation. She was one of those, like, she was like basically a porn star, penthouse pet, kind of going on. And then Billy Idol did some of the music for Heavy Metal 2000, and I didn't even know that until I read it on the DVD case. It's like, oh, Billy Idol did this, right? It didn't sound like Billy Idol, maybe it was Billy Idol. It just didn't. I don't remember like recognizing Billy Idol in the movie or whatever. And so with Xena, it was something where like, no, this is a decent show. And the thing about it is now is like, if I came upon, let's just say a DVD or something, or Xena was somehow accessible that I can actually watch Xena Warrior Princess. If I found the season 1 DVD, would I watch Xena Warrior Princess? And I don't know if I'd be able to get into it or not. It could be because it was a little bit of a soap opera. And that's the kind of thing people got into, because it was sort of like that kind of thing where the story progresses and the characters progress and things just grow, and then you get used to some of the characters and what they're doing, and the story just continues. Whereas like with Xena Warrior Princess, it was just like, no, you don't really need the story. It's like you can just watch the show, right? It was just like, there's the show, and you can just pretty much watch, the first episode or like the 100th episode, and it would still pretty much be the same. You'd pretty much know what's going on. But what was cool about it was she was basically like this warrior chick, and she was friends with, what was her name? The other girl, and she was kind of a lot younger than her and whatever, or she seemed younger than her. She played a younger character, and she, instead of using a sword or whatever, she used a staff, which is cool. I mean, which is okay, but honestly, I would prefer if she used a sword. She would be more badass as a swordswoman than with a staff, because like the enemies that Xena would face, you can't like face them with a stick. You need a sword. A sword is a superior weapon. People stopped using sticks when they started making swords, and you're not going to go into war in the ancient world with a staff. You could pretty much, you could kick some ass with a staff, but if you're going to go to war or have some kind of medieval fantasy battle, and you're coming in there with a staff, a sword will cut that staff in half. It'll just slice right through it. It just will. Yes, if you can use a staff really, really well, you might be able to beat someone with a sword, but it's just a superior weapon. Why have a staff? Why make her less powerful than Xena? Why do that? It didn't make a lot of sense because Xena kept her around. She would help her. She was her sidekick, and maybe that was the reason that they did it that way, because she was like, her role was sidekick to Xena. Her role was like secondary character, supporting character, you know. But I don't see why, even if she did have a sword, even if she was more badass than she was, and she could kick ass also, but even if she was like with a sword and more armor, because you also didn't wear armor at all. Xena had some armor, right? And what was her? I don't remember her name, but whatever. She, her sidekick didn't really have any armor. She just had a staff. Now, this is the thing about it. It works if it's a TV show. Like it'll work as a TV show because none of it's real, and they can make stuff up, and anything goes. But the thing about fantasy and fantasy art and making fantasy movies and making anything that's fantasy is you want to be part fantasy and part reality. You want to make something that's fantastic and out there and really, really cool. At the same time, you want to kind of like make it into something that's connected to some kind of reality, have some kind of rules where it's just not pure fantasy. So it doesn't look like, just pure fantasy. If you look at a movie like any, like, for example, like the Dark Crystal or something like that, right? If you look at something like that, if you look at like other fantasy movies, there are some movies that are just pure fantasy. It's just like they're not real at all, and they're not like grounded in any kind of reality, and they just don't. People don't relate with them, because you're using regular people. You're using people that are sort of like are relatable, that are just like human and whatever it is. You don't want to make pure fantasy. Like look at something like Superman. He's pure fantasy, but he lives in the modern world. Something like he's, without that, what is the relatable thing to that? Just a bunch of just like fantasy characters with nothing rooted in reality. Even something like, for example, the Watchmen and whatever, they're fantasy superheroes, but they had to live in the real world, and they had to like survive in the real world because there was a real world there. There was some kind of a real world that they lived in, and they were human, and there was something that you can relate with and stuff like that. So with Xena Warrior Princess, she was human, and you can relate with her. With Hercules, it was more like he was half god, half human, and it's just like, okay, how does a person relate with someone who's like stronger than everybody? Because like most people aren't stronger than everybody. With most people, there's always someone stronger and someone less strong and whatever, right? There's that. There's not like, this is the strongest person in the world, right? And this person's a half a god, And so when you look at something like that, it's like, well, how do you relate with Hercules? It makes great stories when he fights monsters and whatever it is who are also kind of like stronger and whatever, but you can't really relate with him as a hero. Just like, I mean, you could kind of, the only, like, for example, Superman, like, how do you relate with Superman as a hero? He's way stronger, way more powerful than anyone can be, but you relate with him somehow because, first of all, he's got a weakness, right? He can be defeated, with kryptonite and whatever. He's got that. He's got the weakness. He also can't, like, have a normal life, which is another thing that people can relate with. It's like, oh, I see. When someone's that powerful and that good, well, they just can't be a regular person. And that's why, like, Superman has to be Clark Kent in order for him to have a normal life where, he walks around in a suit, wears glasses, and works at the newspaper. That's what he really wants to do, but he wants to help people. He wants to, like, help the world and whatever, but he also wants a normal life. And so for that, he has to be disguised, So that's the thing about it, is that that's what you can relate with. You can relate with that, the nerdy guy who works at the newspaper, and his life, that, you know, like most of his life, when it comes to like his relationships and other people, he connects with people from when he's Clark Kent. Superman, he just like fights crime and fights things that are wrong with the world and helps people and like saves people and whatever, you know. But he doesn't just want to be that person. He wants that connection with other people, and so he's got to be Clark Kent, you know, because he's really got to like kind of like make himself. It's kind of a disguise, but at the same time, it's not a much of a disguise, because like someone that's that like removed from the human world, right? Someone so different than everyone. Well, how's that too much different than the guy who's nerdy and wears glasses and works at the post office, right, not the post office, the newspaper. You know, it's like, well, he's nerdy because really he's probably like really is nerdy, you know, as Superman, because who's he friends with, right? Who's he spend his life with, right? He's kind of that way. He's kind of like removed from everything. So naturally, he'd be like, his personality would be a nerdy guy, and that's his personality. You know, even like when he's Superman, he's still that nerdy person where he's like, he doesn't know how to connect with Lois. Well, yeah, he can take her flying around, you know, pick her up and fly her around and all kinds of, you know, that kind of fancy stuff. But you know, what about like, what's he like in conversation? What's he like when you live with him for, you know, a few years together? Like, how do you connect with them? And he's always going to be that guy that can't connect with other people, you know. There's that. There's the fantasy where it's like you want to connect with the character a lot. So how would you connect with Xena? And the thing is that, like, I think that what they did with Xena is they made it kid friendly, right? They say family friendly, but that's just because your kid watches TV with their family. And I don't know, like even like, I mean, a kid probably will watch something that like is kid friendly. Like, I don't think their parents really want to watch that. Like, you know, there's a lot of like cartoons that are kid friendly. There's a lot of like Disney stuff that's kid friendly, and they say family friendly. Well, that's cool. It's a good way to wrap that up and present it that way. But really, it's for kids. It's really not for family, the adult part of families, because they're just going to be bored of it. Maybe it's entertaining with Disney. It is entertaining and stuff like that, but it's mostly for kids. And that's what they did with Xena. They made it for kids, but they also made it for adults. They kind of made it for everybody. But this is what I think about Xena Warrior Princess, is that I think at the time it was the only thing to watch. And I think because of that, and it just had no competition. And I think because there was nothing else on, like now it's really, really hard to make a movie, I think, because there's always so much competition with what you can do for entertainment. You know, you can watch movies, you can read a book if you want to read a book, you can play video games, you can go to a show, like a live show and whatever it is, like a theater. There's a lot of stuff you can do. And if they put like a TV show on TV, will someone actually watch it because it's on TV? Not necessarily, because you would watch stuff before because it was like, oh, there's nothing going on. It's a regular day, it's an evening, or it's during the day. Let's see what's on TV. Because you have the TV there and you have your remote control and you're like, let's see what's on TV. And you turn something, and there's only a few channels, and you like flick a few channels, and it's like, and then you see something like the Xena Warrior Princess, and she's got this round freaking thing that she throws. It's sort of a boomerang, and it comes back to her and stuff like that. I think she's a good character. I wonder why they never made a Xena movie, you know? And I also wonder why they never made a Conan the Barbarian, the TV show. Like, they've never made a Conan series. I've seen people do Conan content and Conan stories on YouTube. They're just like Conan stories I've never heard of before. I don't know if they made it up, if that's from books, if it's from comics, but with Conan, there's so many stories that have already been done with Conan that no one's ever heard of. Unless you like read the comic book or read the books, right? The old books that came out in the 50s. Like, if you read that, you'll kind of like know what those stories are about and have those stories. Literally, how many Conan movies have there been? two Conan movies with Schwarzenegger and another Conan movie, which I personally didn't like. I thought it was really bad. I didn't like that movie at all. It was horrible. And, it's probably not as bad as I remember it. I just thought there was nothing good about it. I think that what they did was they were like, people are going to watch it if we call it Conan. It's like that. Like, for example, it's the same reason as like, if you're going to make a candy, if you're going to create a candy and freaking produce a candy, and you call it Coca-Cola flavor, a lot of people are going to buy the candy because they know what Coca-Cola is. They know what kind of to expect, right? And that's the thing about it is that like, but the thing about the candy that's Coca-Cola flavor is that doesn't mean it's going to be a good candy. It's just kind of Coca-Cola flavor, and it says Coca-Cola on it, you know? And so that's the thing about it is that they use a lot of words to actually try to like make something that someone would watch. And with Xena, it was kind of on the air. And I think that a lot of the times with now, it's just like we have so much stuff. Like I don't see a lot of buzz around Xena Warrior Princess lately. I think that I still see a lot of Conan the Barbarian stuff, right? But there was never a TV show. And Xena would have made a great movie. They made a movie, about other things. They made a movie about lots of different characters. Even John Carter of Mars, they made a movie about that. A lot of people didn't like the movie. They thought it was lame. The thing is, I think that it's just like, this is the thing about like movies that are based on something that already exists, like John Carter or whatever it is. People going into that movie saying, is like, hey, this hasn't been done yet. Why don't we do this based on this? Right? Rather than I have this great idea and I've been thinking about it and working on it for years, and now I want to actually make this happen. It's like, let's just say you have an idea for a story and it's an idea and you've been thinking about it a while and developing the story, developing this world, maybe even writing about it or making some kind of content about it. It's like, it's something that already exists that you're like, okay, I've been thinking about making this story and I've got these great ideas and now let's make it into a movie. Rather than like, well, the story's written by somebody else, it's kind of popular, and we're probably going to get funding for it because it's something that people have heard of, that there's some kind of following for. And what that has, that's okay because it's okay, but what it doesn't have is an idea of what are we going to do. It doesn't have the idea of I've got this great idea for a movie and this is what I'm going to make, right? I think even with like Conan the Barbarian, they had that. They had both of that. They had like, oh, this was a book, this was a comic book, this is still a comic book, and I've got this great idea how we can make this a movie. That's going to happen, and that's going to probably be successful to some degree. Whereas like, let's just make a movie about this because it's got a following, and let's just see who we can hire to do this. And it's like, well, it's someone else's story and it's someone else's universe. So does the person creating the movie care about someone else's content? They didn't like think about this themselves. They didn't create it themselves. They don't have like an image or an idea of what this is going to look like. They're like, oh, let's just make a movie based on someone else's work. And when that happens, a lot of the time, sometimes it works, a lot of the time it doesn't. Because it's based on someone else's work. Like, for example, with Alan Moore and The Watchmen, they made the comic book. So Alan Moore made the comic book. There was 12 issues, and it was The Watchmen, and it came out. It was a great comic, one of the best comics ever written, I think, ever. And he did it, and people were like, oh, we're going to make a movie based on that. Was the movie good? I saw the movie. I liked the movie. It was good. Was it as good as the comic? No, because the comic was actually made by the person who created it rather than somebody that's adapting someone else's work, And that's the thing. Like when someone's doing someone else's work, it's not as authentic. It's more of like a copy. It's more of like, I'm trying to do this other thing that I maybe understand, but it's someone else that actually understands it a lot more, So that's the thing. It's like there was no way to to do that a lot of the time with like these characters that already have a name for themselves, right? With Xena, it was cool, but they did make her like kind of generic. I think they had a good idea of doing Lucy Lawless as Xena. I think she really performed really really well as that character. What I didn't like about it was there was just not enough. I think it just wasn't as great as I remember. There were other TV shows that I thought they were just great, but for some reason this one, it wasn't that great. They could have made it better, I guess. I think with hiring maybe just just better writers, just someone that can write for that. But we're what like if you look at something like Red Sonja, she had really cool villains like Thulsa Doom, who was the villain in Conan the Barbarian, the movie Thulsa Doom. He's just a classic like Conan Red Sonja villain. Whereas like in that show, it wasn't like a continuation of the story. It was a new episode every time, and there was no like character development. It was like you can watch the first episode, you can watch the 100th episode, and you'll still understand all of it, pretty much. And so that's the thing, is it just felt like the same show, just made the same all the time. There was nothing different. There was no progression. There was no character development. She was already done. She was the complete character. She had her personality, and they always had the same interactions all the time. All the people it was sort of like a fantasy, like a sitcom. It's got like sitcom elements. It wasn't funny, comedy. I mean, it had humor in it, but it was more of like that TV show where you know what to expect every time you watch it. Like, for example, Different Strokes or something like that. You know what to expect. You know what the characters play themselves, and there's a different story every time, but everyone's the same. And that repetitive thing about like they're always going to act the same, and you watch it because that you like the character and you like how they act, and that's what they did with Xena. And I think that was the end of it. That was the last time they did that. They did the same thing with Merlin, the TV show Merlin, that I never saw when it was on TV, but I did see it on streaming. And even though it was like a fantasy show, it was sort of like the same way. It was like, it was just like the characters, their personalities, and they're gonna play their personalities out, and their interactions out with each other, and the interactions they always have with each other, and who they are and how they react, and what's gonna be funny and what's gonna be serious and what's not gonna be funny, and you know what to expect, and you watch it because you like these characters and you see the same thing over and over again. And that's the thing about like Xena. It was like there was a lack of story, there was a lack of progression, there was like, where's this gonna go? And it just went nowhere. It was just sort of like the same show over and over again. But it was sort of like, if you look at something like the Batman TV show, it was also kind of funny, but kind of like a real superhero show. With Batman, the thing about Batman was it was the same. Like Batman and Robin was pretty much the same, but there were so many different villains, and they were so outrageous that every time you would see this different story with these outrageous villains who were like, this guy was a penguin, this guy was a Joker, this one was a Catwoman, and this one was King Tut, whatever it was, right? They were like so many different villains, and it wasn't the same show over time. Even though there was so much similarity from one episode to the next, it was so outrageous and so different because every villain was different. In every show, you would have a different villain played by a different actor, and the plots were all different, even though there was a lot of similarity between show and show, And with Xena, it was like, well, I like the character Xena. I like, God, I forgot her name, but whatever, the supporting character. I like the villains. I think her name was Callista, who was the goddess and whatever it is. But where's this show going besides the same thing over and over again? And that's the thing that I think that they were just doing with TV shows that wasn't necessarily a great thing, whereas like they were just making them the same over and over again. And I found that was the problem with TV shows. A lot of the time when they do that, it's not necessarily a good thing, even though people watch. And I think back in the day, people watched more because it was just less of a selection of what you can watch. It was on TV, everyone had a TV, you turn it on, you watch it, you turn it off. a lot of the time people would watch what's on TV because there was really nothing else on, you know. But if you look at a lot of the shows back in the day, they were repetitive. They were like, you know, even though like, I mean, at the time, Incredible Hulk sounded like it was a great show, but it was repetitive. It was the same thing over and over again. Yeah, Incredible Hulk, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century was like the same kind of. It was sort of the same characters and the same stuff with nothing really new happening. There was no actual story progression, and I think that's the thing about Xena was at the time was kind of like the best fantasy show on TV, probably because it was not a better fantasy, but I still think that it was good enough to watch. It was good enough to even get into and start watching it like regularly. I think it was good enough, but I think if they remade it now, I think it would go with a great remake. Maybe a mini series, maybe a movie, maybe even like another series. It wouldn't be Lucy Lawless because she's way older now. I don't think she would be able to do Xena, Warrior Princess, but I think if someone really kind of had an imagination for it and a love for that character and that show and that universe, I think that person could make a good Xena Warrior Princess TV show. You know, because I guess at the time it was like, let's create a character, let's make a TV show, people are going to watch, we're going to make money. You know, I think that's really what it was at the time. And it was a great idea. I know it was a great character and whatever it is, but it isn't something that I think that I would want to like go to. If it was on TV, maybe I'd watch an episode or whatever, just casually. I casually liked it, you know, I casually liked it. But there were a lot of other TV shows that you can just get into and just watch every episode one after the other. You know what I mean? And so even though it's the kind of thing that I liked, I just thought, and even though I like Xena, I just thought that like, I don't know, I think that they could have done a better job with maybe Xena or maybe a Xena-like character or maybe a sword and sorcery kind of like TV show where they had that kind of, you know, fighting princess warrior chick kind of thing, you know. So you know, so that's the thing about it is that I'm sure a lot of people love Xena Warrior Princess. I'm certain that there's people that absolutely love that show. They watched every episode, right? And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who've never even watched it, that don't even care, you know. But that's the thing about it is like what I really think about it is like it was good, but it would have been much better if it was better, you know, if it was Tarna or something like that or whatever. So yeah, but that's the thing about like Xena Warrior Princess. So let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in another video. Take care.